Hey, Scott Spears here doing a video blog during my Memorial Day hiatus from radio. Recently caught up with a book over Memorial Day that inspired me to do this blog. The Crucible by Arthur Miller, which I believe many of you have probably read. It's a popular book in high school. It was mandatory at one point. I'm not sure if it still is. But if you haven't read it, you should. And if you don't remember it, I'll give you a little overview of what it is. The Crucible by Arthur Miller is about the Salem witch trials from Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. 1692 this happened. And there were some things that I wrote down as I was reading the book that I found very poignant, and maybe you will too. The story is essentially about Reverend Paris, and Reverend Paris's daughter, in the beginning of the play and the book, gets ill. Very ill. And Reverend Paris suspects that it has something to do with witchcraft because she was out in the woods having a good time with some of her friends and some people in town who they thought might be involved in witchcraft. Well, anyway, that's how it all starts. The Reverend's daughter's ill. He's afraid that she's going to die, and then he becomes afraid of witchcraft. And a Reverend saying this in 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts, gets everybody in an uproar. So eventually people start being named as witches. And one of the most poignant person who is named as a witch or involved in witchcraft in this whole situation is 70-year-old Rebecca Nurse, who has no real ties to witchcraft at all, except that somebody named her as a witch. Well, anyway, Rebecca Nurse is put on trial, and by the way, she was not afforded a lawyer. She was not allowed to have a lawyer. Well, some of the girls in the courtroom said that Rebecca Nurse denied she was a witch, but some of the girls in the courtroom said that she was doing it through her mind. She was doing it telepathically. And so they sentenced her to be hung because she would not admit that she had been taken over by the devil. She said she was a good Christian woman, and she said, "I've never been taken over by the devil." Because she wouldn't admit that, she was hung in the gallows. Now, this is a line that Reverend Paris, the father of the daughter who became ill, allegedly from witchcraft, says. This is what he says in the Crucible. "You are with me or you're against me. And if you are denying my God, then you are consorting with the devil." How many different religions do we have out there? We have Judaism, Catholicism, Christianity, many spearheads in Christianity, Methodist, Pentecostal. We have Nazarenes. We have so many religions in the world. Remember that. If you're either with me or you're against me, and if you're denying my God, then you're consorting with the devil. So guess what? Some old ladies got hung in 1692. Now maybe we'll bring this more up to recent times. Does anybody remember the McCarthy trials of 1954 through 1950 through 1954? Senator Joe McCarthy decided to say to people that they were frightened. The country was frightened because we were at war with the USSR at the time, the Cold War, not a war where shots were being fired. But he had fears of communist influence. So anybody who had ever signed a document supporting communism, or anybody who had ever proclaimed that they were a communist anytime, was brought before trial. And a lot of times their careers were destroyed. They were blacklisted for saying they had signed a petition, just signed a petition in favor of communism. Now, I went to the dictionary and got the actual definition of communism. Now, this is what the definition of communism is. Advocacy for a classless society in which private ownership has been abolished and the means of production and substance belong to the community. That's communism. Now, do you think that's what Senator Joe McCarthy was talking about in 1950 through 1954? Or was Joe McCarthy talking about Russia, the USSR, the Soviet Union? I don't think he was talking about communism, but he couldn't say he was talking about the USSR, because that would have stirred a lot of problems. He was talking about communism. Communism, in which is advocacy for a classless society. But that was horrible. That could cost you your career in 1950 through 1954, and did cost a lot of people. And if you refused to name names, you were held in contempt of Congress. Does any of this seem to have any bearing on what's going on today? If you're in the media and you report something that people decide is against the government, you're either with us or you're against us. That's the line. 1692, Salem Witch Trials, Reverend Paris. You're with us or you're against us. If you don't believe what I believe, then you are consorting with the devil. If you don't believe what I believe, if you're not for the causes I am for, then you are for the enemy. Think about it. Very